You're listening to Pop This, the podcast where two women talk about everything pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen and Andrea Warner.
The Foot Saga continues.
Is it graduated to a saga from like a story?
It feels, I don't know if there's a cutoff or just when it's a story. It feels like the longer it goes on, it becomes more of a saga, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure, definitely.
Yeah, so I feel like it's become a saga now.
Okay.
And, but I've, because I probably will never write a think piece about this. I'm here. Why don't I just do that instead and talk? I just want to share with you and our listeners something that has occurred to me in the past little while. So I don't go out a lot. It's my foot, right? It's broken. So you can't really get out. And I have this knee scooter that I get around on, which people have seen. And it is what it is, right?
I love a knee scooter. I think it's a really sophisticated implement.
Do you? Well,
honestly, I think I remember doing crutches when I was younger, and I know I was
crutches
younger.
Are really hard.
But
yeah.
crutches are really, like, my armpits never recovered.
Yeah, no, I've had to use crutches too. So here are the things that you discover. People are kind. Can I help you? Can I hold the door? Can I hold your package or whatever it is for you while you're getting to your car or something? And that's very nice. However, it comes with this. What'd you do? Oh, I broke my foot. Oh, and then I get to hear a story about their broken whatever. Yeah. Limb, hip, foot, ankle. Sometimes it's not even them. Sometimes it's their husband who did something. And one time I was like lingering at my car, like I can now drive because my foot works. And the person was like, kept talking, and I'm trying to get in because I want to not be out on the street anymore. So it's been a very interesting thing. I think in much the same way that pregnant women say, people just touch their bellies without any invitation. And it's very peculiar when you're in some kind of this position with my foot that this is the time to tell me their story.
Have you heard any amazing stories?
No, I have not. I have heard long stories that don't have endings. And then I'm imagining myself in a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where I'm still holding eye contact with them, but I'm wheeling away. Slowly. No, I haven't. No, there's not. What are you talking about? Like I was climbing Mount Everest and,
sometimes,
my Sherpa fell and I threw him over my shoulder and then I broke my ankle.
Or I was doing my aerials and like I tried to make this move and my person didn't catch me.
Nothing like that at all. No. Most of them have been just very like accidents, much like what I did. So maybe there's another learning moment here for everybody. That man, you're just like doing your thing, and then next thing you know, you're on a knee scooter, and you're in a mall and you're talking to somebody about how their son won't go to the hospital to have his foot checked out. And you don't know what to say to them because you don't know their son and you don't know why someone's telling you that story, but you listen. And then it segues into how her daughter's trying to have a baby. And
wow.
Yeah. That's when I started to push off, but holding eye contact, but could hear that.
But in general, do either of you find like that people just like to tell you stuff that are like they're strangers?
Never.
Well, I mean, it depends on the circumstance. Obviously, like on a plane, which I haven't done in a while, when people are very, they're going to sit next to you for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't actually, that's funny now, all of these different things doing with our pandemic and obviously my broken foot. I haven't been out much and we're not in close contact with people anymore. Even if we're waiting in line for something, quite a distance, there's no chit chat. So ideally, however, that hasn't stopped the people that see me, has it? No.
Well, there is this idea that, like, seeing anything that is sort of like disrupting what quote unquote is like a normative body is an invitation for everyone else to like tell you about the ways in which their bodies have been non-normative as well. And like, I mean, normative in a very quote unquote ableist sort of manner, you know, like it's
yes.
But I do think there is like this invitation sometimes. I have obviously had numerous people comment on my body in various different ways.
Really?
Ways that a lot of women do, or the ways that specifically a lot of fat women get. Like so many, like I one time had a woman chase me off a bus who like, she just like, I tried to get away from her on the bus. She wouldn't wait away from me. I got off the bus. I was with my niece and Carlos. She didn't try to talk to Carlos. She only wanted to talk to me. This is not a slender woman who just wanted to tell me about how my lifestyle would murder my child. Assuming that my niece was my child. Yeah, she was great. But I do get a lot of people who either like feel licensed to comment on my body or talk about my body or want to talk about my body with me. And this still, like, I mean, I wear headphones a lot when I leave the house, so I don't have to like deal with people. But I also have a mistake in that I make, you guys know this about me. I make eye contact with strangers and I smile at them sometimes on the street because I'm friendly and I'm like silly. And so people like to tell me a lot of really intimate stuff about themselves, just in the space of like a normal sort of hi, bye or whatever. Like someone will just be like, hi, did you know that like I'm dying or whatever? And this happens like a lot. So the pandemic has actually been kind of a nice reprieve for me in terms of like that kind of experience. Like I haven't had a lot of, well, I guess because I haven't been outside, I haven't had a lot of people be terrible monsters. So that's good. That's good. That sounded sadder than I meant it to be, but like that's
okay.
Weird.
Well, yeah. Well, I guess that's what you're saying then. When you have something that people think they can comment on, they will.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's horrible. But but you kind of don't mind talking to strangers, right?
Well, it depends. I don't mind it sometimes, and I do feel like, people need someone to smile at them and make eye contact with them and just make them feel human. So I don't mind doing that either. I think I do attract a certain level of unhinged or vibrantly unwell or vibrantly lonely. I do attract that as well.
I do talk to people. I do talk to people on this a lot. I do. I don't mind it, actually.
Well, especially when you're walking your dogs, you probably get it all the time.
Yeah, I chat with people all the time, and and I usually like it. I mean, there is sometimes a moment where you realize, I'm sure, since you said some very unhinged, lonely people, where it takes a turn real quick, and you don't know quite what to do. Like, oh. Okay, this is not just a chit-chat on the street anymore. I'm actually feeling a little bit afraid. Okay, then. Bye-bye. That's happened. Yeah. Yeah, I've had that happen before where things just seem a little out of control. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, mostly I do like to talk to strangers. I do, like you were saying, I could have had an interesting story about someone, but But, there's still time. Getting more active now.
How much do you have to use your scooter?
Well, still quite a bit. I mean, I'm doing it right now as we speak. I'm putting my foot on the ground. And so it has been healing quite well. But it hurts. It's still swollen.
Oh no.
And there's still a bruise.
There's still a bruise?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's been 2 months. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, 7 weeks.
7, excuse me. I apologize. My internal clock's off because of the pandemic. So
remember what I said, and it sounded so depressing back in August that I was told that I would be like walking normally by the end of November.
Yes, and you were very upset about that.
Yes, I was. I continue to be. That was not necessarily in the past.
People can listen to the last 6 podcasts to follow your saga, because then you were really happy that you got like a good prognosis when you went for like a follow up.
Yeah, I was, and then it's an up and down situation.
It's been a total roller coaster, Lisa. For those of us observing, I don't know what to expect 1 week to the next.
I know. I don't even know what to expect from myself one day to the next. It's always. It's a little bit frightening. Every once in a while, like I'll, think, well, what if I accidentally forget and I step down real hard? Can I send myself back to the beginning of this situation. I don't know. Yeah, I have no more words. I'll just continue on the 8-week part of our saga next week.
I can't wait. I mean, also, honestly, I do think that like maybe this particular saga, which I really appreciate this word now, for us to use. I mean, I think it has lent itself to creating that perfect environment for our Gothic horror month. Because there's like not a lot of body horror in this movie that we're going to talk about today, but there's a lot of sort of like existential horror. Yeah, so I think that's great. I mean, I don't want this to have happened to you, but I'm glad that we're able to make some interesting things out of it.
Yes.
I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Lisa Christiansen.
I'm Andrea Gin.
And you're listening to Pop This, and we are continuing on with our Gothic horror with a real classic. We are talking about Jane Eyre, and specifically we're going to be talking about the 2011 film, which I had not even known I didn't even know it came out. I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, I do. Okay. Remember. I remember not wanting to see it very much. But here we are. So
I'm glad I've seen it.
There are so many adaptations of this movie. Why?
So many.
I don't know. It's very weird. I don't know because it's not going to be one of my favorites.
No, sure. Like every decade has its own adaptation of Jane Eyre, basically.
Well, I mean, copyrights expired, so that's one thing. But I mean, two, I also think that like people are really drawn to this as, I mean, okay, a few different reasons. The white supremacy in the film industry. And then 3, people I think are really drawn to this because they read it as a child often or like as a teenager. And then like it grows from there. Like I know that I did not read it as a teenager, but it's one of my grandma's like favorite like books and movies. And those are things she sort of saw in her teenagehood. And like I think because it has that that really hard childhood that Jane emerges out of. And I wouldn't say she necessarily triumphs, but she has a very specific core set of beliefs and identity that she continues to sort of grow into. She's like that classic strong female character that people really want to sort of see themselves as.
Well, the novel is also in the first person.
Yes. So
I think that's definitely, as you said, a draw for young, for girls and women. And I think that because there are so few of those novels, so few female novelists, so few stories that we're all drawn to it. Why it needs to be made into a movie over and over again is, I guess, as you said, there's always one more person coming up who read it and went, I must put my stamp on it. I'm surprised it hasn't been made into like a, something more like recent kind of look to it,
Have like either of you seen the other adaptations?
No, so this is my first Jane Eyre ever. I've not read the book. I've never seen any of the movies. I've never seen any of the miniseries. Nothing.
I've seen one of the other versions and I can't remember. They all kind of,
just reading about it today, there's a version from 1996 starring Charlotte Gainsbourg.
That one sounds interesting. I like her a lot.
Yeah.
But also, there's one from 97 starring Samantha Morton.
Yes, I think I've seen that one.
That's so weird to me. Like
why? She looks like the same girl.
But she was supposed to be like sort of like I just remember her more from like sort of like conventional Gen X movies, not like I don't put her in a period piece.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm happy to read the background. It's brief. Jane Eyre is a 2011 romantic drama film directed by Cary Fukunaga and starring Mia Wasikowska and Michael Fassbender. The screenplay is written by Moira Buffini, based on Charlotte Bronte's 1847 novel of the same name. It's a classic of the Gothic Bildungsroman and romance genres.
Well done.
Bildungsroman is just one of those words that I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly ever.
Yeah. Well, you look at it. How could you? I mean, I will give the synopsis. So as an orphan child, Jane Eyre is first cruelly abused by her aunt, then cast out and sent to a charity school. Though she meets with further abuse, she receives an education and eventually takes a job as a governess at the estate of Edward Rochester. Jane and Rochester begin to bond, but his dark moods trouble her. When Jane uncovers the terrible secret Rochester has been hiding, she flees and finds temporary refuge at the home of St. John Rivers. I think that misses a lot.
It does. I intended for it to miss a lot.
Okay. All right.
We're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Is a governess the same thing as what a nanny is today?
No, she's the teacher.
She teaches, like private tutor, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then there's the nanny, or whatever, I guess.
The nanny was that French woman who was following the kid around.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And then, not to be mistaken with Dame Judi Dench, who is
the housekeeper.
House manager,
But so
housekeeper.
Does governess exist as a job today?
Maybe they call it tutor.
Yeah, I think they call it tutor, or they call it like private teacher. Like it's not really because also governess sort of implied, I think, usually, that the young woman was well trained but didn't really have necessarily anywhere else to go. I'm not.
Yeah, governess. Just the definition is just a woman employed to teach and train children in a private household.
There you go.
So that's all she had to do.
Because Maria in Sound of Music is the governess, right?
Oh, and I thought she was the house nanny.
Andrea Warner would not know.
I don't know.
You have not seen The Sound of Music?
Nope.
Oh, for the love of all that's holy.
Still haven't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just think like governess is sort of like a retired position now that like public education is sort of the way that almost everyone is sort of educated.
In Wikipedia, it says, set in Austria on the eve of Anschluss in 1938, the musical tells the story of Maria, who takes a job as a governess to a large family.
Oh, okay.
She educates all those kids though, right?
Yeah, I guess she does.
Yeah.
Okay.
What a thankless job. Like a bunch of kids. God, at least this one only had one. But she did have to deal with Rochester, so there's like different things.
I wanna say that I know we've only done 2 in our series of Gothics right now, but I do want to say that the Gothic meet cutes are not very romantic.
I mean,
they're quite awful and frightening.
This Gothic meet cute was better than the meet cute in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Like, I mean, it had at least more innocence in it. She knocked
nearly
the guy
get
off.
killed by a horse if you think that's innocent.
Well, she knocked the guy off the horse by accident because the horse spooked because she's like apparently some kind of like I don't know, elven woman of the woods. Here's the thing. Because I hadn't read this before or seen the movie, and I knew that there was some kind of weird twist or whatever, like some kind of haunting or something. But I also knew that other Gothic literatures have included vampires and werewolves. And so I kept saying, like, I was watching this last night with my grandma and Carlos, and I was just kept saying, like, so is there a werewolf? Like, is he hiding a werewolf? When does the werewolf come out? And they were not amused by me. But I think a werewolf would have really like kicked this into a next level.
See, that's going to be your adaptation. Because we need number like 20.
Yeah, but they've done those books, right? They've done the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and maybe I don't know what they did to Jane Eyre.
Jane Eyre and werewolves is what we. I hope there's an audience for that at some point. So are you both familiar with like the story and like does it hold any place in your heart?
Well, what's interesting about it is I think that I've like from knowing it, reading it as a kid to now, like my impressions of the crazy wife up in the attic has definitely changed over the years. Yeah, now
you're on her side, right?
Well, now I'm like a lot more like, who says she's crazy, right?
Exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
And we're to take the word of a young girl who is in love with this man. Yeah. Right? That's the person telling us this story.
Our deeply unreliable narrator.
Our deeply unreliable narrator. So, and I obviously, as we pointed out, The Wide Saragossa Sea is the attempt to give her an actual existence beyond being the mad woman up in the attic. And so over the years, that's just come to me to be like, I keep thinking about it as like when people have that, my crazy ex, she's always pissing me off and haunting me, like, basically. And
Yeah.
I feel like Jane Eyre is kind of the blueprint of that sort of thing. And I might be wrong about that, because that's...
No, but it's kind of taking a Bluebeard approach, right? Like this man comes into your life and he tells you not to go into the attic. I mean, he didn't actually say don't go into the attic, but he did quite frequently tell her not to move or speak to people.
Yes.
And then you find out that the reason is because he's literally hiding a human being who is his wife, locked up against her will. And Bluebeard was like, he had killed a bunch of women when they like dared to like break his rules. And there's a very similar parallel in sort of that. I was really mad at myself. Here, I'm going to just confess something deeply humiliating to me. So I was not like on their side as a couple. And then suddenly there was this moment, and this is why I made my stupid handle name on our hangout, Poor and Unearthly Thing. There was just this moment where I was just like, oh, man, how'd they get me? Now I'm team Jane and Rochester. Like, how did I fall for this deeply, like, I know this man is bad news, but I'm still like, well, she seems happy and I don't want to tell her how to live her life. Everyone's always been telling her how to live her life. And then, within 20 minutes, obviously that particular rug is pulled out from under my feet. And I felt very silly that I had fallen for him the same way that she had, against all my better warning bells. And then not only does she find out that he's
married,
caged a woman,
yes,
and kept her in an attic for years and years and years, and probably knifed that dude with like his sword. I mean, unless maybe his, like, the wife, unless Bertha did it, I'm not really sure what the situation is. But regardless, like, then he puts his hands around her neck and says, I could snap you. I was so mad that I fell for it. I was so mad. I was not happy at the end. Spoiler alert, they get reunited. But, like, I was not happy at the end. I don't like that... but don't you think by the end, like, that's, I mean, my guess is that for the writer, that there had to be some punishment for him. Well, sure, he gets blinded.
Yes,
after like trying to save a bunch of people in a fire.
Yeah.
But like he gets blinded, but he's almost died in an inferno. He has no scars. He has no anything like that. He's just
his
somehow
hair's rather unruly.
So he needs a haircut. Like, I mean, he needs a haircut and a shave, and he's been rendered blind with no other sort of like any kind of like scarring to like.
It's a very kind of injury, because Michael Fassbender's a handsome man. Why disfigure him?
I know, but that's like the worst. Like, it's so bad. And then like she finds out that like all men are gross, because what's his like St. John is just in it to sort of like force her into marriage, because he's icky. And so she's just like, well, if all men are gross, I might as well go with the one that like gives me a stirring in my areas. And so she goes back to him. Like, that's all.
Well, what else was she going to do? She gave the speech out, looking out the window longingly, that women have no way to ever do anything.
But she had $5,000. Like, she said,
10,000
or 5,000 pounds or whatever it was.
Oh, I thought it was 10,000.
She divided it.
Oh, right, with the sister, right?
The sisters and the brother. But like, she had all this money. She bought her she had her freedom finally. Yeah. And like, she's still like, well, in my freedom, I choose. And that's why it was so funny. I was looking through reviews to sort of like share with us in our outline. And one of the reviews was like, yes, reader, she marries him again. And I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, that's the headline of the piece.
But now he's like, now their relationship is the balance will be with her. And
I know, but that's like, I mean, talk about ableism. Like, can you imagine, like, the reading of this, like, it's awful.
Oh,
like,
no, I just meant, like, I'm trying to think.
No, I know, I understand.
Like a Bronte writing this.
Yeah, no, I agree. But like,
that there's some kind of thing that now she has some power, even though it's not, like, over that guy, even though before, anyway.
Yeah,
it's not great, and it's disappointing. And
in 1847 time, I get it. Yes. I'm just like, bleh.
Yeah. Well, that's the tricky thing, isn't it? Trying to read it now and think about what we do, and your own self changes over the years, right? And then somebody bothered to go, yeah, like, what the hell's going on with the lady in the attic? Like, right? Like, somebody asked that question.
That's where I want to spend all my time.
Because we make jokes a lot. Like, a lot of people are wondering, why did Ryan Murphy want to make Mrs. Ratchet, that Netflix show?
Yeah.
When you were watching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, have you seen that?
I have seen parts of it. I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing.
Okay, but you know who the nurse
is.
Yeah. At no point when I've seen that movie have I gone, oh, what's her story? Not once. But he did. But everyone watching or reading Jane Eyre was like, what the hell's going on with her? Yeah. Like, what is, Yeah,
and I mean, like, last week we talked about Rebecca and how we wanted to hear Mrs. Danvers' backstory in a separate series. But, I mean, I found it interesting, given our conversation last week and how we were talking about how we saw Rebecca in a different light, rewatching the movie now.
And they're very similar stories, aren't they?
Yeah.
With the first wife, like, literally haunting and,
Yeah,
sort of
exactly. And it's just like, I read this novel when I was a teenager, and I didn't have a great memory of it. It wasn't one of my favorite books. But then just watching it right now, it's true. Like, when you're an adult, you're just watching it and you see it from a completely different perspective. And you realize that, she's an unreliable narrator. And it just makes you rethink about all the stuff that you've seen. And, also I like, even things like Gilmore Girls, right? Like, when I first started watching Gilmore Girls, like, I was never young enough to relate to Rory necessarily, but like when I was watching the show, but like definitely Lorelai I was more related to. And then the other day I saw on Twitter someone typed Emily Gilmore is the protagonist of the Gilmore Girls. I'll fight anyone.
I believe I made that argument on the Mother's Day edition.
You did.
Yes, I did.
I mean, I think it's possible that all three are allowed to be the like protagonists and share in that sort of protagonist role of like, what is like, how do you just be a woman? How do you be a person?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that they share in that role. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I've been watching a few episodes of Gilmore Girls, just like looking for something to watch in an idle moment. And it's just like, like Lorelai to me now, like, I don't relate to her as much. Like, I find her really almost insufferable. And
I think that would be upsetting if you did, because honestly.
But, like when I watched the series in the early 2000s, I thought she was amazing.
I rewatched an episode recently too, and it was when Rory graduated. And so Lorelai had to be on that grad committee. And Max, the man she jilted, was like trying to stay away from him. And she's chasing him around the room going, come on, just give in. And I thought, whoa, if you switch that.
Well, society switched that. Like, this is a subversion of society. And I think that that's why it gives us that sort of permission to see it as less than a little bit creepy. But like, with Gilmore Girls, it's super interesting to me all the time, because I have rewatched that a lot. And I've never thought of Emily as the villain at all, but I think a lot of people really want to decide that someone is the villain in a show, whereas like all of them can be kind of villains at different times. Mm-hmm. And like I know that one person I remember a long time ago was like, as the daughter of narcissistic parents, Lorelai Gilmore is a nightmare. And I was like, yeah, I can totally see that particular reading. Like, but at the same time, it's the same as when I watch Sex and the City. Like, I mean, you have to have these sort of lead characters who are deeply flawed, because that sort of is one of the things that makes them interesting. But like, as we become more aware of what those flaws are, because our relationships to these characters shift over time, like we start to sort of think of them more as like bad people, instead of just being like, oh, these are complex people who like kind of suck sometimes.
True, but in terms of a character arc, like Miranda became a lot more kind after she became a parent. Lorelai just became more narcissistic.
But I don't know. Anyway, that's probably a different topic. Maybe we should revisit that on Mother's Day.
That is not a gothic story, but we could make it into one.
It has its own gothic. There's like a very large mansion, and there's definitely like the haunting of sort of weird generational trauma there. But like one of the things that I think about with like Rochester is just how many of us grew up thinking, and I know that I've done this, grew up thinking that we could rescue a damaged man and that he was more interesting, compulsively more interesting, because he was brooding or because he needed help or he needed someone to sort of like understand him.
Yeah. Well, I think that, those are patterns. Like that's what my father was kind of like, you know, the life of the party. And then suddenly, where was he? He was mysterious and handsome. And I think, yeah. So, gosh, I know I'm doing therapy here, so let's not, but yeah, I think that even from, that's Wuthering Heights, that's Heathcliff, right?
Yeah.
The brooding man who has, so much on his mind. And I think it's about, at the end of the day, I think what it is, and this Jane Eyre really got it. And I think it's very similar to Twilight, which is that you were chosen.
Twilight's the right.
Worst. You were, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, of all of the women out there, I'm so complicated that I chose you.
Yes.
And that is some kind of validation that women have been brought up, knowing that that's what they're supposed to want.
Yeah, and particularly through pop culture, like when he says to her over and over again, "You bewitch me, you transfix me, I want to talk to you," like the simple-minded help, and this like dumb, like he really sort of does everything he can in a very like super gross way to praise her and elevate her and make her feel like that chosen feeling. It's deeply distressing.
It is, and I think that's the weirdly the sort of yin yang of that brooding man, like it's that, but then it's that you were chosen, right, to be that.
But it's so weird because Jane does give us everything that we sort of would want, particularly from an 1847 standpoint, in that progressive feminist woman. Like she wants to call out like the ridiculous sort of elements of status quo. She wants to challenge hierarchies of social structure. She wants to, she does have that sort of like slightly puritanical kind of like thing where she really believes in goodness and like, she confuses sort of, I think, pureness with ethics and morality and that kind of stuff. Like, and so I was really pleasantly surprised by a lot of different things that she said and indicated and dictated for herself, and was always had like seemingly this very strong sense of character. Like, I am not a liar. You are deceitful. Like when she's talking to her aunt when she's like a kid and stuff. And, like I thought she's a really compelling protagonist that you can easily get behind. But she also ultimately just, and I understand like it's fine to just want to be loved, but she's not above the manipulation that Rochester invokes.
Well, let's cut her a bit of slack. That was a pretty miserable life. Like,
when she says that line about how she's lived a full life, on that estate, it's very like, wow,
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, somebody who is there to offer you, well, not, as it turns out, she doesn't need the money later, which also is an interesting addition to the story, which I guess is the telling of that she really did love him. There seems to be some kind of urgency in this story to make this a real love story, to make people sacrifice things and come together, and I don't need your money and I chose you. And so there really is a lot of effort. So what I'm saying is, I believe you are right in that your feelings you had for thinking this was a real love story.
I know.
Because it's really built that way. It does all the things it's supposed to.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a real love story before the whole hidden woman, because I just like the ways in which he defends himself immediately. And I guess one of the articles that one of the articles that I found was from Slate by Jessica Winter, and she like assesses the movie, I think, in this really keen way. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but like, you know, she just she comments that like the acting is really brilliant, and I do think the acting is fantastic. I think Mia is kind of amazing as Jane Eyre. Like I thought all of her decisions were really good, but so this is from Jessica Winter, who this whole article is about rating the creep factor of all the Jane Eyres, and it's so good. But she says, you know, coaxing Rochester out of Jane's forgiving imagination and onto the screen exposes him to harsher judgment for, say, not looking before he leaps across the gulf of years, social status, and legal impediments to propose to Jane, and for forcing Jane to take a front row seat at his protracted flirtation with snooty socialite Blanche Ingram, and imprisoning an actual living human being in the attic in the whole time, however much we might adore him. And in the end, don't we love Rochester because we love Jane? Our hero is, objectively speaking, a bit of a creep. Thus, the success or failure of any Jane Eyre hinges on how well the film minimalizes its inevitable creep factor.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's a very good observation. And I do think, like, you know, Jane as the heroine, and I think like that's also another good point. We love her, so then we kind of do fall for Rochester because we're seeing him through her damaged, like her trauma. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is something that's occurred to me more over the years. Like I said, the first time you read it, you just take it for granted that, well, wouldn't that be a drag that you have this ex that's completely crazy, right?
I remember the first time a man told me that his ex was quote unquote crazy, and just how I felt kind of sympathetic for him. I was like, yeah, that must be really rough, you know, like it's so wild how some people can be so difficult. And then like the more you hear that story from so many different people, the more you really do start to be like, oh, it can't be everyone's exes that are like that. It really must sort of, I think the fault lies within. And that's why I love meeting people who are just like, yeah, no, we're fine friends. You know, like
it didn't work out and whatever. They're on there.
And you can be philosophical about it. Like, it's, you know.
So Lisa, you saw Wide Sargasso Sea.
Yes.
What was the story? What story did they make for Bertha?
Well, they meet. Wait, I just was seeing it here because it's a long time ago that I saw it. It's like from the 90s.
The movie is from the 90s, and then I think the book is from 67.
So he meets her. He's working in like in Jamaica, and he meets her there. And basically she goes crazy because he makes her leave Jamaica to come to this, you know, house at this castle in the middle of the moors and doesn't let her do anything. So, you know, that's what sends her to a kind of madness, but it's his doing. You know, he's not a good guy. He's not very kind to her at all.
Like, well, one of the things that like I think is worth talking about for sure is like the a lot of scholars and readers have addressed like a racist subtext to Jane Eyre and the depiction of Bertha. So one of the things, quote, like Bertha is viewed as Jane's double. Jane is pious and just, while Bertha is savage and animalistic, you know, quote unquote. And though her race is never mentioned, a lot of people have conjectured that she was of mixed race. And Rochester suggests that Bertha's parents wanted her to marry him because he was of, quote, good race. And like there's a lot of like Bronte's references, like discolored and black face. And a lot of Victorian writers have suggested that at the time that madness could result from a racially impure lineage. So all of like there's like a very awful racist subtext going on like in Jane Eyre and particularly in the depiction of Bertha.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like this movie I feel skips over all of that. Like they show her as being unkempt and she's like
very hot though.
She's beautiful, but like she's filthy. Like her face is full of dirt. Yeah. But like they don't address any kind of racist element at all.
No, they make it. We're actually, like you said, we're supposed to sympathize that he's such a good man. He's still taking care of her and keeping her up there and letting her apparently wander around or whatever. I mean,
we just don't like. They sort of minimize her, even like minimize her as much as possible in this movie. Like we barely get to see her at all.
Yeah.
All we see is that like she has probably lit his room on fire. And then we see her for like 2.5 minutes, if that. Yeah. We find out that he feels that her parents tricked him into, because they knew that she would go like this or whatever, that she is unreasonably violent and is prone to both external harm and in like self-harm. And then they don't even address the fact that she, like, we don't see her final act of destruction. Like, we don't see that she has burned down the castle or that she has, like, leapt to her death. And the potential element of freedom that she might have in, like, finding her own way out and choosing her own path. Like, she has been kept in this room. Like, he's got a whole freaking castle. Why is she locked up in this one room in the attic? Like, that's absolutely awful.
In the movie, I think they eliminated the character who was supposed to be her caretaker. And so in the movie, when I was watching it, because I didn't remember the book very well, but it seems like who is taking care of her? Who is giving her food and stuff?
She almost never appears on camera. They just refer to her constantly as she's in the drink again or something.
So like that character is in the book. And so... yeah, it's just a little bit, because it's like, are we supposed to believe that like he is taking care of her in the movie? Like, how is she surviving?
Because no one seems to particularly care.
Because the housekeeper
didn't know
anything about
her. No, which is like, and why is she wandering around?
Apparently, like that's the other thing is like apparently from the book she could get this, like the woman who's watching her, she can convince her to like take drinks and she's like inclined towards the bottle, and so she passes out and can have access to the house. But like, I mean, she only exists in other people's sort of presentations of her, and she doesn't get to be her own character. She doesn't have any autonomy at all. Like it's a ghastly sort of role.
It's a device of some sort, and I'm not entirely sure what that is, like why that is necessary for Rochester to have this. It's I guess this Gothic tradition, right? Of the, like when with Rebecca, it was the spirit of someone dead, and this is the spirit of an ex or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, in Rebecca, at least like he gets to be a straight up, definitely bad guy who murdered his wife.
Yeah.
In this, it is so twisted to be that he is ultimately tormented because he's a good guy who got stuck in this situation, and he is such a good guy that he hasn't put her in a mental institution where they just get caged and treated like animals, apparently. Although I cannot say that she looks like she has much better. But I mean,
there seems the theme that I'm noticing always in these stories too is it seems that like it's some kind of issue for the young virginal girls, that this is what you're going to have to deal with when you marry a well-to-do, experienced man. He will either have a crazy ex in the attic, or he will have a dead ex that kind of permeates the home that you try and keep after, and that is the price you pay for being young and innocent.
Well, yeah, and that's like that. This is what you are. This is why he wants you, because you are unformed.
Yes,
and
you will clean
and
his
the opposite
mind.
of his
Yeah.
the opposite of his former
because they were both
spouse.
wild
Yeah.
women, right? Rebecca and Mrs. Rochester here, Bertha. They were both like passion-filled women, right? They had seen things, they did things, and they turned these men crazy. But not you, young whatever you are, young
you'll
girl.
redeem me and you'll save me.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going into a relationship with that particular set of expectations placed upon your shoulders as like a 20-year-old woman? Like, I just,
But we fell
God.
for that again in Jerry Maguire with Renee Zellweger saying, or him say, "You complete me."
Oh, I know. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, honestly, like, I think about like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I think about her relationship with Angel and how he's like this tormented bad boy who's like, you know, he could 100% kill her, and like they are like, she is good for him, but he is very not good for her. And the expectation is that there is going to be a sacrifice on her part at some point of either her innocence or her life or her virginity or whatever. Whatever one you want to hold up as being the most important that week, patriarchy. It's just, oh my God, it's so exhausting.
So what I didn't quite get about this book is, why does he bring Blanche to the house?
Oh, I guess because he was still kind of going to see her, but I guess he wasn't sure about what Jane's intentions were. I don't know that. Yeah.
He's a sadist and like extra gross.
Yeah, because like what?
Because he can't marry her. He's got
It
woman
feels
up
like
in the attic too.
It feels like because Blanche shows up at the house, kind of expecting like she's going to be proposed to, right? Because that's like, why else would she be there? I guess. But then I guess like she just goes home.
Well, then there was the talk of her getting married, and I guess I don't know, like if Jane hadn't gone running out into the hills or whatever, and Rochester followed her, and she said, I care for you, and then he went, oh, I'll marry you instead. Why didn't she go, wait, were you going to marry her?
Yeah.
Like, what is this whole ruse thing here that's happening?
Yeah.
But I guess in retrospect, like Blanche totally dodged a bullet.
Blanche got off like super well. Can I just say, like, this movie felt like 3 hours long.
It's because the color palette never changed.
The color palette, yeah. I mean, I liked it enough. Like, I thought that Cary Fukunaga did a great job. Like, I think, but the pacing of it is really bad. Like, it slogs. Like, you feel like you're in the mud with Jane going across that field.
I didn't need a montage scene of her teaching the little girl.
No.
Did you feel that the story being told in flashbacks was effective?
No. How utterly unnecessary. Did I need to see that like climb twice to understand just how much she's sort of like pained about it? No.
Yeah. No, I didn't.
Not at all.
It's just like it was all after a while too. It was just like a series of like very similar looking little girls with pouty mouths too. Just, like I mean, I recognize
the kid who played Jane as a little girl, and then the one who played the little
Adele.
girl. Yeah, they look almost like this, like sisters or something.
Yeah, and Jane lost that pout. I mean,
well, it's weird because at one point when they're showing Jane by candlelight, I literally think they superimpose young Jane's face, and then they show her growing into Mia's face. Like, unless my eyes were really playing tricks on me, but I felt like after she has had this sort of big revelation, it's a very clumsy sort of like conveyance of how she has grown up in this moment, and it's unnecessary because Jane is supposed to be our hero. Like, she is the heroine. She is like the one, like, of all the things she says, all the things that she thinks, like, she has this sort of like kind of steely resolve for all the stuff that she goes through. And it becomes so much more a movie, in this movie particularly, where we spend all our time talking about Rochester.
Yeah. Interesting. Good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a movie that really like sacrifices Jane's story to like end up being more of a story about like the ways in which she's disappointed by like love and all the people around her, and less sort of about how she sort of builds her own resolve around that, because we don't ever really find out like how she grows into this sort of like, you know, kind of defiant person. Like, I don't
Did
know.
anyone see the Far from the Madding Crowd with Carey Mulligan?
No.
No.
No, it kept making me think of it. So that's I think that's a very similar era when it was it was written by Thomas Hardy, 1874. Isn't that the same year?
No, 1847.
1847. Oh, look at me. My flip them things here. Anyway, they've got this great heroine and she gets all this money and she is living alone. And there's the handsome farm boy likes her, who's, you know, very nice, but she goes for can you guess who she goes for? He's not any good for her.
The bad boy.
The bad boy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so there's what? So a few years between these two stories. I mean, that's
40
Thomas
years.
Hardy's a man. 40 years.
I mean, honestly, it sounds like 40 years is supposed to be the age difference between Jane and Rochester, but not in this movie.
Yeah. So she makes all the bad choices too, with men. So
yeah,
it just, what are you gonna do, right?
I mean, write new stories, I guess. Like,
Or,
I just
retitle this novel "Bad Choices."
You know what? You know what? It makes me think is that what a refreshing thing it was to have The Paper Bag Princess by Robert Munsch.
Truly,
right?
That's
where she
subverted.
finally just says, "You stink."
Yeah,
you know, like you're dumb, Prince, whatever your name is. I'm out of here.
Subverted a genre.
Exactly.
Yes. I just want to point out that like Carey as a director, he is like, I mean, this was in 2011. He has now directed the new James Bond film that who knows when that'll ever come out. But I'm
True Detective.
And True Detective, and like he's done lots of cool stuff. And I mean, I do think he does a very faithful job here, in terms of sort of like, it feels, from everything I've read, quite true to the book, and it's outside of the pacing of the film, which it really should have been 90 minutes, not 2 hours. Like I felt pretty good about it, and I did think, I mean, as much as like I'm not the biggest Michael Fassbender fan, but I thought that they both did a really wonderful job, and Mia particularly I thought did a great job. But I was so mad that all the acting awards went to Michael Fassbender.
Yeah, because he was fine.
But I think it speaks to how we talk about him so much in this particular episode.
Right.
Rochester gets to just have so much more complexity and depth, and everyone else is reacting to Rochester.
Yeah. Stinking Rochester.
So I guess men shouldn't direct movies. Like
well, I don't. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of what I find a little bit disappointing about the way the movie was made. It, as we were saying, like Jane Eyre is an unreliable narrator. So for us to just take this story and just tell it as the crazy ex up in the attic, you know, and I'm a kind guy and I tried to save her at the end, that just seems to be such a disservice to everybody watching, reading, and even pondering this story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Rochester should be creepier from what I've read from Jessica's Slate article. Like, and I mean,
I get it. In that year, he'd be feeling 1847, very entitled to whatever he felt about women. They're just property, right?
I get that, but like that is creepy, and we don't allow that creepiness to sort of like Carrie's direction has decided that we need to redeem him.
Yes. I've got a gavel here. Yes, exactly.
We need a director. We need a director to shoot it from from Bertha's point of view.
100%.
During the story.
You know, what a great way for Jane Eyre to end is that Jane creeps up the stairs, meets Bertha. Both of them go, what a awful man he is. And then they push him out the window and they live happily ever after in the castle.
Oh my God, that's a beautiful story. That's a beautiful story. I love it so much. Okay, well, that version would pop. I mean, like, this to me didn't, like, not pop, but I can't give it full pops. I'm sorry.
If you're into, like, these period pieces, it's not the worst. I've seen a lot. If you like Jane Eyre, it was fine. You know, but...
Yeah.
But, you know...
I don't know. It just kind of... The story really annoyed me this time around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was kind of a dreary movie to look at.
It's so dreary to look at.
It's very
for 2
flat.
hours.
2 hours.
Yeah.
Also, like, Grandma was just like, it was too long, and it was kind of.
It was 2 hours, for the love of God.
Yeah. I want you to earn those 2 hours. You are not entitled to my time. So we'd love to also leave our episodes on stuff we recommend. AG, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, this week I listened to a new podcast from our friends at Kelly and Kelly. It's called Hindsight. And I really enjoyed it, actually. It's like a docudrama that they're producing for Al Jazeera. And it sort of looks back on the lives of some influential figures in history. The first episode that came out this week was Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, interesting.
And they kind of they get an actor to sort of narrate, like they go over the facts of his life and then maybe kind of dispute pop culture, like what people believe in pop culture that Lawrence of Arabia did. And it's just a fun listen. It's like a storytelling and you learn something new.
That's great.
Yeah, it's called Hindsight.
Awesome. Thank you. Lisa, what about you?
So I tried watching Emily in Paris, as maybe...
I knew you would.
Of course you did. Of course you did. I got through like 2 episodes and then I just couldn't do anymore. I just didn't care at all. I mean, I love looking at Paris. I expected more from Darren Star. I don't know. It seems the reviews have been mixed more to the bad side. However, during my frustration, I did find a really funny show on Netflix that is called Call My Agent. And this is a French, I guess it's a French Netflix show. There's 3 seasons about this agency that represents actors and the kind of things that go on there. Anyway, the show was so successful in France that like real actors wanted to be on it.
Oh, awesome.
And so it's very funny. So if you are looking for, a trip to Paris, this is better than Emily in Paris, which is just, I don't have words for it. It was not good. It was not good.
All right. Well, I mean, I like a good recommendation. That's great. As well as a recommendation to like not watch. I think that's good too.
Stay away. Mm-hmm.
I am going to recommend, there's a new record out that is like a great time to listen to this. It's volume 2 of Good Music to Avert the Collapse of American Democracy. It is a compilation of 77 previously unreleased tracks from your favorite rock bands and indie rock bands and all sorts of cool people like David Byrne and Pearl Jam and Jenny Lewis, my personal favorite. 77 songs.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay.
So go out and find it. I am fairly certain you'll find it online everywhere. But it's called Good Music to Avert the Collapse of American Democracy.
Well, good luck with that, folks.
Good. Yeah. I wish you all the best in this endeavor. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and for hanging out with us. We really appreciate you.
This being our Gothic Horror Month, we appreciate it very much because we know it's already quite scary out there, as it is.
It truly is. And I mean, it's just so nice that you want to be haunted by us, as well as these movies. Thank you so much. You could hang out with us on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. You could rate and review us 5 stars on iTunes.
5 stars, like a general. And thanks to Andrea Gin for co-hosting with us and producing. This has been week 972 of the pandemic. And so it's been really interesting and continues to be. I presume that my co-hosts here have bodies, but I haven't seen their actual bodies in several months. So they've just been heads to me. I do look forward to, once my foot becomes better, traveling outside, even if it's like just waving at you. I want to see a full length view. That's all.
Yeah, I'll put on pants for you.
Thank you. So nice.
True love.
True love.
Oh,
True love.
yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, bye.